Where in the world do all the millionaires live? Now, estimates vary on how many millionaires even exist, but the number is generally known to be somewhere in the 8 figures, in the tens of millions around the world. Today, I'm going to tell you where the most millionaires live and where the most millionaires are going to live in the future. Where millionaires live is very interesting to me here at Nomad Capitalist because we're seeing a migration of part of the millionaire class in the world. This year is a big year for Russian millionaires to be leaving the country. You're seeing people from Ukraine to see all kinds of beautiful cars from Ukraine over Montenegro and different places around the world. So millionaires there, of course, are leaving. But you're also seeing people in countries like the United States. Americans are giving up their citizenship, not just leaving their country with the ability to go back, but they're leaving for good. Record numbers of people are giving up U.S. citizenship, and they're mostly expected to be high net worth individuals who just want to live overseas and be left alone. And so today I'm going to tell you where all the millionaires in the world live and also where they're going to live, because I think it's important to track the trends. If it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson, founder of Nomad Capitalist. We're a boutique consulting firm that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you are treated best. Everything from tax reduction to diversifying and protecting your assets, to having second citizenship, and other ways to protect your freedom in an unfree world. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com, and you can also join our live event, Nomad Capitalist Live. More details on the website. So, a couple ways we can look at this. Per capita, if we pull up some recent statistics, this is from 2020. And so the number of millionaires has been steadily going up during the pandemic. Obviously, one of the concerns and one of the complaints that politicians, generally on the left side of the aisle, are bringing up is too many people are leveraging that wealth to make money in the stock market, make money in cryptocurrency, grow their businesses. Our business certainly did very well in the pandemic. Not that we expected or created the pandemic, but our business did well. And so certainly people have become wealthier. But here's what it was in 2020. And by the way, if you're wealthy, you're going to be paying more in taxes because they don't like that income disparity or the wealth disparity. Switzerland, 14.9%. So that is a pretty crazy number. Almost 15% of people living in Switzerland are millionaires. Now, there's different ways to measure this. You'll see a great disparity. Like, for example, the United States, the country with the greatest number of millionaires. Some figures will put it at like 5 or 6 million. Some will put it at 22 million. Given that you've only got about 122 million households, 22 million people, unless you're counting like a husband and wife, like they're both millionaires, that seems like a pretty high number, and 5 or 6 seems a little bit low. My understanding was the percentage was always kind of in the 6, 7, 8% range. So there's different ways of measuring it in the sense of it could be liquid, are you including home equity? There's different things that go into it, but so that's why that's different. But Switzerland, almost 15%. Then Australia at about 9.4%, US at 8.8%, Luxembourg at the same, Hong Kong 8.3%, and then the Netherlands and Sweden and Denmark and New Zealand all at 6 or 7, Belgium, Canada, Singapore. Note where Singapore is, 5.5% of people in Singapore are millionaires, which, by the way, I actually believe is dramatically underreported, because you can look at other studies and other metrics of what a millionaire is, and you'll see it's closer to 1 in 5 or even 1 in 6. So that would beat Switzerland. That's the problem with some of these reports, is like, how do they measure things, right? You look at a report of what does it cost to live. I saw a report recently, it costs $4,000 a month to live in Monaco, which is absolutely insane. So you take these things as a comparison, right, of the fact that Switzerland, yeah, they have more millionaires per capita than Australia. It's perhaps a little bit more than the United States. Of course, the United States, by sheer numbers, has more millionaires than anyone else. And again, you'll see different statistics ranging, there's a fourfold difference. Singapore is the one that's underreported. If you look at just total number of millionaires, US, Japan, Germany, of course, China, that's been the big one coming up, France, the UK, and again, Switzerland. However, I think it's important to look forward to going forward. The United States, of course, is always going to have the biggest number of millionaires. I think China is very much competing with them on that front. But just sheer population, only a country like China or India, where they're creating a lot new millionaires, or they'll look at billionaires sometimes, only they are really going to be able to compete. I mean, the UK has a fraction of the population. Australia has a tiny fraction, right? I mean, you're just never going to have as many millionaires. Countries like Luxembourg, like Switzerland, like Singapore, you have such a concentration because you've had, in some of those cases, very tax-friendly policies. But here's a report from the Star in Malaysia, which says that Singapore will have more millionaires per population versus the US and China by 2030, according to the world's worst bank, HSBC. Now again, I have seen other data that shows that Singapore actually has one of the highest concentrations of millionaires in the world, because people have gone there for so long. You have people now leaving Hong Kong to go there. You do have some folks just leaving Asia entirely and going to Dubai during the pandemic, but Singapore has always had very high numbers of millionaires. But here's the report from Singapore, from the Straits Times and The Star. These are the big newspapers in Southeast Asia, saying in the next 8 years, the number of millionaires in Singapore as a share of its population will grow to surpass that of the US, China, or any other economy in the Asia-Pacific region, says HSBC. Under their statistics, the Republic, where 7.5% of the adult population had wealth of at least $1 million US, always obviously in US dollars, would see the share of millionaires rise to 9.8% in 2025 and then jump to 13.4% in 2030. So I haven't seen in other reports Switzerland being so high, and I've seen Singapore actually being higher. So I'm showing the numbers that are the latest things that have come out. This one, for example, looks at citizens and permanent residents, right? And so theoretically, you could have someone who's a temporary resident. I don't know that too many folks on an employment pass in Singapore, that could be millionaires, or an entrepreneur, entrepass for entrepreneurs. Listen, plenty of business owners. I mean, I know people who've moved to Singapore. They're starting their business on an entrepass. They're millionaires. They've had an exit or they've banked money. So that certainly is possible. But what they're doing is they're saying cash in banks, investments in securities such as stocks and bonds, as well as real estate holdings, which includes owner-occupied properties after deducting any outstanding mortgage amounts. Singapore is already second to Australia in the Asian Pacific region. They put Australia at 8%. So you can see everyone has their own different methodology. Australia will drop to second place with 12.5% of the nation holding cash and assets of at least $1 million. 11.1% by 2030 will be millionaires in Hong Kong, 9% for the US, 7.2% in Japan, 4.4% for China. So, by the way, inflation has some part, I would imagine, to play in this. I mean, a high net worth individual, $1 million, you're doing well, and that should certainly be commended if you have $1 million net worth. But it's not like, I'm retiring, bring out the yachts, right? I mean, very high net worth individual, $5 million, you could live on that. You're going to live a lot better if you join me in a place like Malaysia, where this newspaper is located, or any of the other countries we talk about. Your 1 million, 5 million, whatever, is going to go a lot further. Countries like Switzerland, by the way, lower inflation rates than you're seeing in a lot of other countries like the United States. But $1 million is not really that much anymore. And so the fact that there are more millionaires, I mean, eventually everyone will be a millionaire. And as they say, if everyone's a millionaire, no one's a millionaire. And so that's partially inflation. But I think also the fact that Singapore is outpacing all these places speaks to the fact that it has done a great job over the last roughly 6 decades creating a stable environment for people to go, for businesses to go. It is not a totally tax-free country. You start a business there, you're going to pay some tax. You're going to jump through a few more hoops than you would if you were in, say, Dubai. And so if your goal is just total tax reduction and you're choosing between Singapore and Dubai, you're going to go to Dubai. However, if you want to live in Asia, and you believe it is the livable, growth case study of the 21st century, you can have a great lifestyle in Singapore. You can pay very low tax, and all the stuff that you're doing offshore will generally be untouched. They are talking about potentially bringing in some new taxes, which is odd for Singapore and should be monitored. But they've done a lot of good things. Certainly more than US and Australia and all these other countries where their economies have been going down. Singapore is the world's #1 freest economy. Doesn't mean it's the best tax position, but it is the most free. And so that's why they are outpacing these other countries. Obviously, you have a few million people in Singapore. They're never going to have more millionaires than the US, but they are, like Switzerland, going to have more per capita. And so if you want to go to a place where millionaires are going, where they are going to take their knowledge, take their talents, take their networking, then you want to be looking at a place like this. And so where are people going? We've seen people going to Puerto Rico from the United States. Housing prices have gone up dramatically. They're going to places like Portugal, which has the non-habitual resident tax exemption. They're going to Malaysia. They're going to Singapore. They're going to Dubai in very large numbers. They're going to Mexico City, not that tax-friendly. But where are people moving? They're doing, to some extent, what I've always said. If you're going to move, you might as well move. Don't move from one state to another to reduce your tax a little bit. If you're going to move overseas, go to Dubai. Okay, Singapore could work if that's more your style, but that's why I think you're seeing these numbers increase. More millionaires will be created. I come from the United States, and I had some money when I left the United States, but I, as time goes on, am creating the majority of my wealth outside of the United States. I learned some things there, I would say, largely from my own upbringing, from my own personal experiences starting businesses, but I'm creating a lot of my wealth overseas. And so therefore, better tax position, have enjoyed life more than I think I would in the United States. And you can do the same. If you want to create millions, it may be easier to do that overseas, especially in an emerging economy where costs are lower, there's less competition. If you already have millions, a place like Singapore, Dubai, you're going to see more people flocking there, the numbers are going to expand, and even if everyone's a millionaire at some point, you'll see more wealth in these places because people are going where they're treated best, and you can too.